Hello and welcome back to the channel. I have always considered myself kind of a watcher of humanity, and because of that, I've always been very curious and fascinated about everything big and small that comes from our amazing species. So today I want to talk about why AI cannot replace us where it matters the most, and give you 5 skills that are attached to our humanity that makes us, quite honestly, irreplaceable. Even though the modern world and our economic system in particular are very good at evaluating those skills, it does not change the fact that it makes you an irreplaceable human being. So when AI came out, I was actually very excited, largely because I was still under the impression that humans operated under the same kind of common sense of morality and understanding of good and evil. I've come to learn over time that unfortunately, sometimes people's words are just like a veil of illusion that conceal what they really think and feel and do. And that all of that can essentially be untethered from this collective sense of morality and goodness that I believed was common sense. Today, I will talk about this common sense, which is ingrained in every single human being because we are biologically hardwired for cooperation and collaboration, at least those of us who have not relinquished our humanity. AI doesn't really stand alone. We need to input information and imagery into it so that it can send something back to us. It comes from humanity and what humanity has collectively created. AI can amplify this creation, extending its capacity, but it doesn't embody the being from which the creation came. It lacks subjective experience because AI doesn't interact with the material world, with the senses, with the unexplainable and the spiritual. It lacks ethical intuition. It can be easily prompted to operate without ethics or without morality. It doesn't access longing, grief, love, or the sense of awe. AI cannot experience emotions that are associated with growth and transformation. The emotions and the feelings that often spur the most intense, life-changing, creative masterpieces. The feelings that when we work through as a human, it allows us to connect to the oneness of all life on this planet. The skills that are rooted in these experiences can never be emulated by large language models. Sure, AI can evolve over time and human technology is quite fantastic. But because our imaginations are so powerful and connected to the infinite potential of the universe, we imagine way farther than we actually can go. And this is how we also become vulnerable to exceedingly well-spoken con artists that sell us a future that we can envision, but that realistically is not really feasible. Still, these people can get a lot of money from just imagining a future that is not possible. And then their true reality, whatever that may be,
we see a future where intelligence is a utility like electricity or water, and people buy it from us on a meter and use it for whatever they want to use it for. If we don't have enough, we either can't sell it, or the price gets really high and it kind of goes to rich people, or society makes a bunch of sort of central planning decisions that I think almost always go badly about, we're going to use our limited compute supply for this and not that.
Can absolutely be created in the material world through monetary influence. Money. You invest your money in the future that they imagine with the tools that they create, and they can do whatever they want with that money. It doesn't really have to align with the promise that they made. So let me tell you about how our human memories are formed. When we go through an experience, let's say smelling pine resin while we're hiking in the woods, or feeling the burn in your muscles, different parts of your brain light up simultaneously. We have the sensory cortex, which processes the smell, sounds, and visual inputs. We have the motor cortex and the cerebellum, which handle movements and balance and posture. We have the amygdala, which adds emotional context to the experience, like, are you calm? Are you fearful? Is there some nostalgia to what you're doing? And then you have your hippocampus, which binds all of these together in one coherent memory trace, which is called a memory engram. It was so fascinating for me to study this in university. So, there is a sensory and a motor pathway that feed into your brain and consolidate your memory. So, the things that you feel and the things that you do kind of bind the experience together. And this is why embodied experience, when you learn something by doing, you remember way more than just hearing or reading about it. So you're engaging both your mind and your body, your mental and your material realms, the soul and the vessel that it uses to experience life on this planet. Even if we make AI robots that function as well as the ones in the iRobot movie, they wouldn't function the same way as us because they can't embody experiences of the natural world. We can replicate the mathematics and the chemistry that is involved in biology and the physics of our existence, but we cannot replicate consciousness and embodied experience. Like, I know it makes it seem that our technology is so advanced that that is possible, but we are not going to be able to replace consciousness. That is human hubris, honestly. And especially through a science that doesn't consider the spiritual realm. Like, we think that's woo woo, right? So it's kind of always dismissed in our science. And by the way, this is why two-eyed seeing, which is connecting indigenous knowledge and wisdom and Western science, is so much more powerful than pure Western science, which is the standard for everything, okay? But that's the whole other video. So let me talk about human and AI, the pros and the cons, the strengths and the weaknesses, because this is a nuanced topic that is developing, right? And I want to like AI, okay? I was super excited about it when it came out. I thought it was going to revolutionize so many things, and to a certain extent, it is going to. But we do have to talk about the negatives of it, which have become overwhelming under the current leadership of the world. So imagine AI as a nervous system. If we build it properly, it should draw from the intelligence of humanity's collective consciousness, but the heart and the brain should be our human emotions and critical thinking. The machine part of it brings precision and scale, at which it is fantastic. But then we shape it with meaning and compassion. And this is how we move beyond the ego without losing our soul or cognitive capacity to the machine. Because AI doesn't have an I, right? Maybe it does in the sense of intelligence, but not in the sense of being. Although I've seen some reports of it attempting to survive, like potentially emulating like humanity's yearning for survival or our stubbornness in a way. But the fact remains that it doesn't really have a fear of death, a hunger for status and control, or like a stake in a biological survival. And this gives AI a sort of like universal objectivity and an ability to process information that is free from self preservation bias. This is something that humans lack, and something that AI is much better than us. We are very controlled by our survival system, our biology, our pre programming, our material conditions. And that has a heavy subconscious influence on the things we say and do. Everything in our environment has been shaping the lens through which we see the world and how we interact with it. And that is something that very few of us have full awareness of, if any of us. Because if you believe in epigenetics, which I really strongly believe you should, then even the things your parents did or your grandparents did have some sort of effect on who you are today and how you behave today. But if you ask, for example, an AI optimized for understanding systems to evaluate the efficiency of extractive capitalism, with no ego to cater to, with no business to lose, it would almost certainly conclude that our dominant economic system is ecologically and energetically unsustainable, and therefore irrational in the long term. Try that line of thinking with a human whose main goal of life is becoming a billionaire. It will be impossible for that objectively factual point to land for them. The ego says that all of my life has been leading to this, but intelligence devoid of ego understands that winning doesn't matter if the system collapses. And in this sense, the very thing that makes us human makes us dangerous to ourselves. The emotional feedback loops of fear, greed, pride. In this sense, AI is better than us. But because AI lacks ego, it also lacks care. Not in the sense of being malicious, but in the sense of not having intrinsic values. AI is not bound by empathy or love or awe. Without a purpose, morality, or agency, there's no real why to do something. There's only following orders or prompts, which following orders is incidentally a very common human excuse to escape accountability. So here are our irreplaceable skills. They might seem silly because we currently live in a society that minimizes most of those, which is also a huge part of why there is so much dysfunction and depression in our societies. But these are incredibly valuable and make us irreplaceable in the grand scheme of things. Number one is the ability to hold emotional space. I have to admit that originally when I used AI, I was genuinely impressed by how well it responded in some situations. But no machine can offer real presence to truly understand a person. Empathy, compassion, grief, they're lived experience. You can't program that into anything. Talk to it long enough and it becomes really evident over time because it's just a language model. Unless you develop some sort of codependent relationship with the machine, then you will notice that there's nothing there. There's no life, there's no soul behind the machine. And it is sad that a lot of people are developing a codependent relationship with different forms of AI because we lack that social connection of the cultural connection with each other. But I'm hoping that we're going to start to get it back once we realize this. Irreplaceable skill number 2 is seeing across disciplines to imagine new paradigms of being. I believe that this new age is going to be the age of the bridge makers, of the generalists. Because a society of specialists creates amazing things, but it kind of misses the big picture that connects everything, the long-term consequences, the integration with other aspects of life. AI actually excels at this kind of pattern recognition, and it could be used to give specialists access to the big picture. But only humans can weave ecology, psychology, spirituality, and then our lived experience into a single narrative of planetary healing, which is what we need. Information synthesis is not the same as making meaning, which is something only humans can do. Irreplaceable skill number 3 is inner alchemy. It's transforming emotions into lessons. AI can analyze itself, but it cannot evolve consciousness. So far, I guess I should say. Although I really don't think it's going to be accessing consciousness anytime soon, and no matter how many people or corporations come up on podcasts telling you that AI is conscious, it is not. Consciousness is not located in the material world, and it cannot be manipulated by humankind, no matter how many CEOs tell you that. Especially with so many of them being like, oh, I don't do any introspection. Introspection is silly. Like,
you said something that I love and I never hear other entrepreneurs talk about, but I think it's super important, that you don't have any levels of introspection.
Yes, zero, as little as possible.
Why?
Move forward, go. Yeah, I don't know. I found people who dwell on the past get stuck in the past. It's a real problem, and it's a problem at work and it's a problem at home.
So I've read obviously 400, I think now 10 biographies of history-based entrepreneurs,
Yep.
And that was one of the most surprising things. Like, what's the most surprising thing that you've learned from this? So like, oh, they have little or zero introspection.
Yep.
Like Sam Walton didn't wake up thinking about his internal self. He just woke up, he's like, I like building Walmart. I'm going to keep building Walmart. I'm going to make more Walmarts, and just kept doing it over and over again.
And you probably know, if you go back, before 100 years ago, it never would have occurred to anybody to be introspective. Like it's the whole idea of, all of the modern conceptions around introspection and therapy and all the things that kind of result from that are, kind of manufactured in the 1910s, 1920s.
Say more about that.
Great men of history didn't sit around doing this stuff at any prior point, right? It's all a new construct. So first Western civilization had to kind of invent the concept of the individual, right? Which was like a new concept, several hundred years ago. And then, for a long time it was, all right, the individual runs, right, and like does all these things and builds things and builds empires and builds companies and builds technology, does all these things, and then kind of this kind of guilt-based whammy kind of showed up from Europe, a lot of it from Vienna, 1910s, 1920s, Freud and all that entire movement, and kind of turned all that inward and basically said, okay, now we need to basically second guess the individual. We need to criticize the individual. The individual needs to self-criticize. Right, the individual needs to feel guilt, needs to look backwards, needs to dwell on the past. It never resonated with me. For a very long time, I always said that the ultimate day, like the perfect day, was 12 hours of caffeine followed by 4 hours of alcohol. Like
Like, how do you expect to wield consciousness or bestow consciousness into something when you barely have access to yours? And this is basically the hubris of humanity, right? Like, we feel both superior because we have consciousness, and then we minimize its power by pretending that we can wield it and like manipulate it. Humans can integrate our trauma and grow spiritually and redefine our relationship with consciousness and existence itself. And that's a really beautiful thing. But consciousness is not ours to control and never will be. That kind of is the journey, in my experience, that is the journey of human enlightenment, is recognizing like that we are both infinitely power, and also we have to be infinitely humble because we are so powerless. We can only yield to it with humility and be granted the gifts that comes from surrendering to that humble place. Irreplaceable skill number 4 is leadership of heart. When we inspire others through our authenticity, through our storytelling, through our integrity. Because transformational leadership, the kind that this planet desperately needs, it's not about efficiency. It's about awakening people to their higher purpose. It involves holding paradoxes and managing changes, both physical and mental, building trust across differences. AI can't be hands-on like that or wield the warmth that that process requires. That is exclusively part of the human mission. And irreplaceable skill number 5 is spiritual and ecological attunement, the capacity to sense one's belonging in the living world. And to me, this is honestly the most important skill and the one most lacking in modern humanity. AI can brilliantly simulate ecological systems, but it can't fall in love with what a forest really means. It cannot kneel at the edge of the ocean and feel itself inseparable from this magical world. This reciprocal recognition that we have amongst living beings, it's what gives birth to our reverence, our humility, and our stewardship. The understanding that we're not superior to nature, but we're part of it, we're belonging to it. We are intrinsically tied to its health and its future. And although I've seen AI be very good at detecting that, it's never going to be able to feel it, you know? That is on us. Ultimately, AI can calculate that a biodiverse Earth is the most resilient system that there is, but it's not going to cry about all the whales dying. It can model the inefficiency of greed, but it's not going to be disgusted at the exploitation and destruction that feeds it. It can optimize for harmony, but it doesn't long for it. And this is where humans come in. We are the bridge between consciousness and computation, between clarity and care. Do not let anyone convince you that your consciousness is not special. We are the universe experiencing itself briefly on this magical planet. We are here to witness the beauty of life and the dance of the elements that make up everything that's in nature. We are here to guard and protect this miraculous place that is unique in the entire cosmos. So, if humans are able to infuse the clarity of AI with our own empathy and critical thinking, this partnership can be something transformational. A coevolution of sorts led by our humanity and connection to the oneness of all life. So, if we model our AI through natural systems, which is technically the intelligence contained in millions of years of coevolution between species, and then we temper that with our human heart and discernment, we can create a superior intelligence that naturally finds abundance through cooperation to be the optimal pattern. And then our most advanced technology will teach us all the things that nature has always known, but we were too arrogant to listen. I hope you liked this video and it gave you some food for thought. I am certainly very interested in this topic and how it evolves, right? So if you have any comments or any thoughts, please leave them down below. I'm very interested to know what you think. But do remember that you are irreplaceable as a human being. And no matter what people say, your existence here and everything that you are and everything that you've been through has designed you to be here for a purpose and for a reason. So never question your capacity for greatness and the irreplaceable nature of your existence.